Live. Everywhere. On netrootsradio.com. David Waldman. Kagro. In the morning. Now, here's David Waldman.
Hey, good morning, everybody. How you doing? Ooh, it's spooky Halloween. Oh, I should have turned on. Well, we'll use the horror dramatic music all day today. As a result of it being Halloween, it's Spooky Tuesday, October 31st, 2023. The spookiest Halloween since 2022, and presumably, all right, well, anyway, I don't know. Nothing in particular to recommend this Halloween versus any other, but a favorite holiday for many of you. Excuse to eat candy corn if you're into that sort of filthy, disgusting thing. I don't hate candy corn. I'm not a candy corn hater, but I'm not a huge fan either. If it's around and it's Halloween, and when else would it really be around? Although it lingers till Thanksgiving, it seems to be the case. Anyway, never mind. We won't be, I don't think, spending a great deal of time going over what are the best and worst Halloween candies. That's not the purpose of today's show. It is a Tuesday, and so we will be hearing from Joan Macabre in the late half, the late quarter, I suppose, of the show, and checking in on what's happening on Capitol Hill. They've decided to keep this speaker. He's still hanging around. There hasn't been any occasion to get rid of him just yet, but he's, I guess, pressing the boundaries. Let's see. I think the first policy fight upcoming is, it's a bit of an evil genius sort of a thing, clever of them to have discovered this leverage point. Of course, Congress would like very much to act, for the most part, on, we have the government shutdown looming again. I forgot to mention. It's now almost November. Tomorrow will be November. That puts us, 18 days or so from this point, from the next government shutdown deadline, November 17th. That I guess is a Friday, and did they set it for a Friday? It was probably what they usually do. And then at midnight, when time turns over to Saturday, the funding runs out. Yeah, it is a Friday. They chose another Friday. Again, using the calendar and the travel arrangements to try to leverage action at that point. They could be doing that action now and taking it up early, but why would you want to do something like that when you can procrastinate until the last minute? And that is actually part of their strategy, and that kind of tells you where we are politically in this country for the last, 20 plus years. It's been a routine thing that you have to use the desire of members to get out of town for either the weekend or probably in this case, is it a week off leading up until Thanksgiving? They maybe take 2 weeks off at that point. I don't know. And that's how they take care of, maybe the single biggest function of the Congress, to appropriate funds to run the government by leveraging it against, but do you want to have to take a flight on a Saturday instead and miss out on the opportunity to be home or have meetings or whatever on Friday evening? That's how we do things. Okay, well, that's fairly sad. But, the other leverage that they've found right away, Mike Johnson jumping straight in, The Hill does a pretty good job promoting itself to me in email, and so they make it very easy to scan the headlines in one place. I didn't really intend for my email inbox to become a news aggregator, but The Hill has forced my hand here, and they do a good job of it. So here's the trick they found, right? Everybody wants to, for the most part, fund a couple of emergencies around the world. There's more division with Republicans over whether or not to fund Ukraine, but Republicans are still, for the moment, stuck in I love Israel mode, very often part of their evangelical bent, which, has its own weirdness. I think everybody knows by now that there's this strange dominionist bent, but even without that, it's just, become the default popular position to say, we stand with Israel. We love Israel. That way you, in their minds, can't be accused of anti-Semitism, even though It's a fairly simple thing to put together. But really also, even if they're not dominionists, they usually think of the government of Israel as a stand-in for their anti-Muslim crusading, and love to fund that as a result. Anyway, so there's this broad bipartisan desire to come to Israel's aid with a foreign aid package. And Johnson's idea here is to leverage a couple of old Republican memes, essentially, in this. We're concerned about the budget, or we want to cut federal spending, or things that we want to do here in the Congress that we want to spend money on have to be paid for. That's still the thing that gets attention in the press and still gets attention across the board. People still believe that that's somehow responsible governance. It's an open question still. Few people are coming around to understand that, but not that many. Most people are still sort of stuck in that mode of thinking. So what would be a great pay for the Israel aid, or really even the Ukraine aid? But I think they correctly assess that there's broader support for Israel aid than there is for Ukraine aid, even though probably enough for Ukraine aid to pass too. So what they decided to do here is, well, what is the federal government spending money on that we as Republicans hate very much? And the answer is the IRS and their increased enforcement and ability to track down wealthy, in particular wealthy tax cheats, and force them to pay their actual fair share of taxes. And they're probably not even getting a fair share out of them, but we're getting closer to the amount that the Internal Revenue Code would suggest on its face, if you're a textualist, let's say, that they owe in taxes, even though they usually pay nothing close to that, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, so they want to, I'll read you the text of the article at this point. Alexander Bolton writes, Johnson's Israel proposal runs into stiff Senate opposition. And if I see any more stiff Johnson headlines, I'm going to quit. I'm going to quit you, Hill. Although, wink, wink. Okay. Anyway, the effort to pass an emergency defense spending package through Congress is turning into a mess. We're going to go straight to the mess stage of this one. Senators say, those are the guys in the other chamber that hasn't been struggling trying to find a new presiding officer. Senators say that new Speaker Mike Johnson's demand to separate Israel funding from Ukraine, first step, and offset the $14.3 billion in Israel aid with cuts to the IRS budget. Yeah, well, senators say that isn't going anywhere in the Democratic-controlled Senate, so that poses a problem. It's uncertain whether Johnson can even get his controversial proposal passed in the House, where Republicans hold a slim 4-seat majority. Senate Foreign Relations Committee Chairman Ben Cardin declared the House Republican proposal to cut IRS funding to pay for aid to Israel dead on arrival in the Senate, and everyone loves to say that. It's a non-starter. It's a poison pill, he said. Like Cardin, Senate Republican leader Mitch McConnell and key GOP defense hawks such as Lindsey Graham and Roger Wicker don't favor splitting up Biden's emergency funding requests for Israel, Ukraine, and the Indo-Pacific. Don't forget the Indo-Pacific. Wicker, the top Republican on the Senate Armed Services Committee and a member of McConnell's leadership team, told reporters Monday that it would be the most prudent move to keep the two national security priorities tied together. And then the third one, too. No, anyway, I'm open to suggestion, but I think it's important that we do border. Ooh, that's a fourth one, really. Ukraine, Israel, and give Taiwan what they need also. That's our Indo-Pacific component there. Wicker, however, was more neutral on finding offsets, because he's still a Republican, to reduce the impact on the deficit, adding there's plenty of room, for offsets in the Inflation Reduction Act, which President Biden signed into law to boost investment in renewable energy. Graham said last week, we got national security issues that are all connected up. I'd like to do it all at once. Other GOP senators warned that getting into a food fight with Democrats over offsets is guaranteed to slow down any emergency military aid, leaving Israeli and Ukrainian forces without weapons at a critical time. Realistically speaking, it's going to be challenging, said Senator Lisa Murkowski, a member of the Appropriations Committee. We all know how hard it is to find offsets of substance. This is real money we're talking about, she added. If you're looking at trying to offset the entire package, I think there's going to be a real challenge for that. We're operating with a pretty tight time frame in order to move something, she said. Murkowski warned that if aid to Israel moves without assistance to Ukraine, Ukraine might not get any additional U.S. military aid for the foreseeable future. I'm very worried that we would not be able to advance additional support for Ukraine in this supplemental spending package going forward, she said. I think the best approach is one that couples them all together. Well, actually, the quote is written here as couples them all together, not two words, but one. That's an interesting choice. Oh, well, we won't linger on that. She said the contours of the Biden administration's proposal to bundle aid for Israel, Ukraine, Taiwan, and money to secure the southern border into one package is solid. She acknowledged, however, there's plenty of room to discuss changing some of the details. I think it would be hard for Ukraine to get the political support for a standalone Ukraine package, she said. Now is not the time to be saying we can only do one thing at once. Okay, who's asking for that? I don't know, just Mike Johnson, I guess. Another Republican senator who requested anonymity said it has little chance of passing Congress anytime soon. I've never seen us offset, honestly, normal spending. I can't imagine that this place would go out of its way to offset defense spending, the lawmaker said, much less emergency supplementals. Those are rarely offset. It will slow down this package substantially, the senator warned. Senators say they expect Johnson and his House GOP colleagues to attempt to pass the measure later this week. McConnell urged Senate GOP colleagues at a lunch meeting last week to keep the Israel and Ukraine money together. He's getting strong pushback from conservatives, quote-unquote conservatives like J.D. Vance, Mike Lee, Rick Scott, and Ron Johnson. McConnell reiterated his support for the war in Ukraine at an event Monday featuring Ukrainian ambassador to the United States, or the Ukrainian ambassador, rather. The word "the" isn't in there the first time. That's Oksana Markarova, I guess. I don't know if it's Markarova or Markarova, but Markarova, I'm guessing, at the University of Louisville's McConnell Center. Gee whiz. Anyway, right now, loud voices on both sides of the aisle are suggesting that American leadership isn't worth the cost. I don't know. He gives a pep talk. It's great. What have you. It's people love it. People are rallying in the streets. McConnell. Well, all right. It's all okay. He has the mainstream Washington consensus view here. Not terribly surprising, even though he's an extremist, and we can't wait for him to be gone. Okay. Anything else here? Not really. He's actually mirroring a lot of Biden rhetoric in that. That's nice that they're on the same page. The question is, can they get the Noah's Ark guy to sign on from the House? Yes, that's in the news too. We'll get to that. So, okay, that's out there. You should realize, and I think it's probably obvious to you in just telling you that if the offset is $14 billion cut from the IRS budget, and I don't know that they're talking about offsetting the entire $14 billion, but anything that gets slashed out of the IRS budget, probably, it'd be interesting to see how the CBO scores it, especially if the CBO is, I don't know who's under whose sway it is now. These days, I mean, Democrats control the Senate and Republicans the House, so not entirely clear. But I wondered whether the CBO would score slashing the IRS enforcement budget as a net loss. I think there's been numbers before that, every dollar that they spend on enforcement yields, some larger number of dollars in collections in the end. So the idea that we would offset a $14 billion aid package by cutting the IRS budget and sending that abroad instead and losing the, I don't know whether it is $5 of return on every dollar invested, seems like it's not an offset, but in fact needs an offset. But I don't know. We'll see whether they are able to make that argument coherently in in Congress and put a stop to this idea with, I guess really all it takes is the Senate sitting down and saying, no, we're not moving. You got to find something different. But it sets up a rhetorical battle ahead of that. So not really looking forward to that one. Let's see what else has they've planted in my timeline through their email marketing program, the hell. Let's see. Oh, well, I think that's the main news for the morning. Couple of other items that really we can double back on things we wanted to get to yesterday, but we spent some time on the Glenn Youngkin administration's Virginia voter purge story instead. I'm pretty pleased with the way that coverage came out. It's getting to be election day, and I don't know. There's been a couple of outlets reporting on the story, but it hasn't gotten widespread coverage, really, the way it should. And I guess it probably won't because Youngkin's presidential bid, I would think at this point, is pretty much stalled out and just not going to happen. Okay, so let's see. Some smaller bore stories to share with you and some follow-ups to yesterday's story. Yesterday, Greg was telling us all about the weird habit that the media had fallen into of insisting that the people who were insisting that there was absolutely positively 100%, in fact, going to be a recession this year and how wrong they really were. And we got a note in the middle of it, and I didn't get a chance to work my way back around to mentioning the inclusion, but Peter Janowski, who has sent us, I guess, well, first of all, via social media, listening to the show and sending us this note, a link to his Substack, which will explain the point that he was hoping we would shoehorn in yesterday. I thought an interesting one, that we were told a recession was coming, but the economy is booming. Another Biden broken promise. That is what's used as the headline here, but that was actually a PitchBot tweet from October 26th. Are they still on Twitter? PitchBot, New York Times PitchBot, or have they? I guess so, because they were responded to by the White House. But maybe it moved over to Blue Sky by now. I don't know. Anyway, so let's see. The White House responds, hey, no notes on that one. That's a pretty funny line. But as it happens, Peter has some information not only about, the fact that, they promised a recession and it didn't come, and it wasn't Biden promising it, but that there were economists who were correct about this. We just choose, for whatever reason, to feature and highlight the ones who are incorrect, because then you get to write scary things like that a recession is coming. And it's Halloween all year round when it comes to predicting doom and gloom for the Biden White House. So, a year ago, the usual suspects, Peter writes, were predicting gloom and doom. Oh, and here's some horror dramatic music for gloom and doom. It is, after all, Halloween. But they were a year ago, which was Halloween, I guess. Ooh, I love overdoing sound effects. It's fantastic. Okay, and it goes so well in editing, too, as I'm scrubbing through the sounds, and you hear it sounds very funny at 5 times speed. Anyway, a year ago, the usual suspects were predicting that doom and gloom in the form of a recession in 2023. One economist was not. Well, who is this economist? There were probably at least 2 economists who were not, but this one is the one whose name we have. And the name is Claudia Sahm. I hope I'm pronouncing it correctly because I just put a lot of emphasis on the name. S-A-H-M. Well, Claudia, a former Federal Reserve and White House economist. So, academic, important, central to the conversation, but for some reason not as widely quoted for her data-driven and, as it turns out now, fact-based analysis of what we could expect with respect to a recession in 2023. Well, she's not as well known among the public as, for example, Paul Krugman and others, but she devised a rule on recessions that has been widely cited. That's good, including by sources like the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis. Now, there are other Federal Reserve banks, And I guess if the Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis loves your rule, but, you know, we don't read the St. Louis Times very often. What's their paper of record in St. Louis? Dang, I don't know. I do know, but it doesn't come to mind, or when it does, I don't trust my recollection of it. But what's the St. Louis newspaper of? Yes, it is the Post-Dispatch. Okay, I was like, well, is it the Post-Dispatch? Or no, that's somebody else's, the Post-Dispatch. I should see. That's where I go off the rails. I get that moment of doubt, like, it wouldn't have come to me that easily. Yes, St. Louis Post-Dispatch. Well, we're not all reading that all the time, I guess. We're all, for some reason, reading the New York Times, and if the New York Federal Reserve doesn't say it's awesome, then it doesn't exist. So, okay, Claudia Sahm, however, has convinced the folks in St. Louis. The Sahm rule, I hope I'm pronouncing it right, states all right, this is gobbledygook. You know, it's actually, understandable for a layperson. It's not actual jargon, but it's expressed in such a way that you'll say, huh? But if you read it a second or third or fifth time, you'll get it right. When the 3-month moving average of the national unemployment rate, I'm going to read it with a pace that might help you. When the 3-month moving average of the national unemployment rate is 0.5 percentage points or more above its low over the prior 12 months, we are in the early months of recession, right? I mean, again, it's all there. It's all in English. It just makes you say, huh, what? Okay, so when the 3-month moving average of the national unemployment rate is 0.5 percentage point or more above, the national unemployment rate is above its low point over the prior 12 months, we're in the early months of recession. So, okay. So if there's been a 3-month sustained period where unemployment is higher than it was at its lowest point in the previous 12 months, we're in the beginning of a recession, sort of the gentle slope possibly into a recession. I get what they mean. So, all right. So there's more unemployment going on than there was when unemployment was at its best over the past 12 months. That's a pretty sensitive trigger. But, in other words, really, it's not that hard to find a recession coming if you want to. It's actually a pretty, I don't know if I would say a loose standard, but it's well defined, but it's not that hard to hit that. And yet we haven't hit that. And yet everybody's running around saying, hey, there's a recession coming. There's definitely going to be a recession, even though this fairly easy to accomplish threshold can't be met. So, all right, there's more. In June of 2022, she wrote, recession, recession, recession. The news is grim. Fears are rampant. Should they be? I will say emphatically, and with data to back me up, we are not in a recession now. This is June of 2022. Businesses added almost 400,000 jobs last month, and the unemployment rate held at 3.6% for the third month. That's outstanding. That's not a recession. And that's a good point. And you'd think it would be obvious. Some ghouls, he writes, like Larry Summers and Jason Furman. Don't usually see that name called out all the time, but I'm not an economist. I keep one upstairs, though. Well, they were even saying we need a recession to fight inflation. Well, guess what? Inflation has gone down without that supposed need for a recession. So, lesson 1, according to Peter here, is don't listen to the ghouls, although it is a great day to listen to ghouls. It's probably the best one there is. That's right. But for the other 364 days of the year, lesson 2, listen to Claudia Sahm. Not just don't listen to the ghouls, right? Today, and of all days, although really this was written on October 27th, but it could have been today. Today, she takes a well-deserved victory lap. Sometimes the impossible is possible. Ask the U.S. economy. Oh, okay. There's some links here leading to, I guess, that inside joke's explanation. Citing the very strong GDP growth, 4.9%. Greg told us about that. Low unemployment, 3.6%, and other factors, along with low PCE inflation of 2.4%. That gets an asterisk, although it doesn't lead anywhere. So, okay. Well, that's an editing issue. Anyway, that's the update from Peter here. Help spread the news using the new DNC tool called Reach. Oh, okay. With a link there. And, I'm not certain what it helps us do, but why don't you click on it and find out? Well, I'll click on it and see for myself. Oh, okay. Well, this is the end of my exploration of Reach. Click in the splash page here. Reach. Enter your phone number to get started. Probably not. Okay. Well, at any rate, it was a good reminder. 1, that we're not in a recession. 2, that there was a funny New York Times PitchBot tweet about it. And 3, there is a name out there for an economist who you can make your new favorite economist. You knew her when? Before it was cool to like Claudia Sahm and to follow her and her economic predictions. You will have heard it here second. You would have heard it at Peter Janowski's Janowski report first, except for the fact that it's a written medium and we're radio. But you could have read it there before. But you might not have had the opportunity to find it unless he had taken the initiative, like a good busy bee that he is, and sent us that link. Thank you, Peter, and thank you for turning us on to the name of a new expert that we should look for when we comb through economic news, Claudia Sahm. Okay, we'll be back in 2 minutes with, I guess we could do more lightning. Ooh, lightning. Oh, but I can't hit the button or else it'll screw up the music. But a good day for a lightning round, especially if there's a thunderstorm with it and you're in a Gothic castle at the time.
Hi, I'm Scott Anderson, the guy that writes the daily summary for this show, Kagro in the Morning. Thank you to everyone that supports this show. Many of you send donations through PayPal, Patreon, Square Cash, Radio Public, and so on. Some of you write your own essays and send them in, or read articles with your own commentary. We appreciate it. Now, some of you are listening to this and thinking, I'd like to help, but isn't there something I could do that wouldn't require money or effort? Why, yes, there is. You can just like us. On Daily Kos, they call it the recommend button. YouTube has a thumbs up. There are hearts and likes and love buttons. Tap our love button. Tap our love button every day. Share our shows and summaries on Facebook and Twitter, YouTube and iTunes, Stitcher and Amazon. Most of these places allow you to write a review, so a sentence or two would be great. Recommend us to social media, or tell your friends to listen to the show. You aren't just helping us, you're helping them find their new favorite thing to listen to. You could change the world. So thank you in advance from me and everybody else in the world.
All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. Like I said, Mike Johnson, still Speaker of the House, and likely to remain Speaker of the House, not despite the fact that he's so weird, but probably because he is so very weird. And you've probably gotten some idea of just how weird he is, but I thought maybe we would let some of the writers who've explored the details of that tell us a little bit more or give us more detail about it. Although I'll start in this weird corner, just for fun, because we need a segue of some kind. From the HuffPost, Jennifer Bendery had this interesting discovery. The Johnsons' online presence, I guess, is undergoing a scrubbing lately. First day out of the box, we were told that we could pass on to you that the Johnsons jointly have produced a podcast of some note. I mean, we noted it. That's one. But we only noted it because someone else had noted it first. But was it Sarah Posner who pointed us to it at first? I think so. I thought it was up to like 100 episodes. It is, nicely enough. It turns out, at the time that we, were pointed to it, 69 episodes, right? Amazing. Given, Mike Johnson's particular brand of OMG, sex is happening, panic, lifestyle, but okay. At any rate, not 100, but 69 episodes. We listened to the one that was of most interest to me personally, episode 12, what really happened, the truth about January 6th, which turned out not to be true at all, but gave us the opportunity to examine one of his textualist constitutional arguments that was just upside down and backwards from the beginning, but that's the kind of guy that he is. So, all right, now another weird, spooky corner of the Johnson persona. In this case, Mike Johnson's wife, who co-hosts the podcast with him. Mike Johnson's wife, she has a name, Kelly, runs a counseling service that, according to the headline here at Huffington Post, compares being gay to bestiality and incest, a favorite of the evangelical crowd, of course. So no surprise, really, but it made me think a couple of things. One, oh no, what terrible people we have in charge of this country all of a sudden, again. And two, oh no, that dumb charge all over again. And then three, it made me wonder, this isn't the intent of the headline, nor is Kelly Johnson's intent of clinging to that weird talking point, going to actually lead us to any sort of logical conclusion. But it did make me wonder as I'm reading it. So, Mike Johnson's wife runs a counseling service that compares, I understand the comparison is being made, but the setup of the headline, the way it's written, it's like, that makes you wonder. So, Kelly, has anybody ever come to you for counseling with a bestiality problem or an incest problem? But except, these people are church people, so probably, yeah, with respect to the incest problem. Although I don't know if they talk to their counselors about it or not. But then again, it's equally likely that they have a bestiality problem and don't come and talk to their counselors about that. But I understand the comparison is supposed to be shocking and it's outrageous. And this is just how, if you consider, and most people, I think, still, and I'm not looking for any social change on this front, still generally disapprove of bestiality. Yes? I think I have general agreement on that. And the idea is supposed to be, well, although we have general agreement in the other direction on being gay, it's meant to say, well, why? It's equally shocking to fundamentalist Christians, so why don't we compare the two? But it actually begs the question, although everyone is always saying that people use the phrase begging the question incorrectly, so I am assuming I'm doing that as well. P.S. St. Louis Post-Dispatch, everybody. But, okay, I was just sort of wondering, though, whether that meant anybody would come to her with those problems. It's a counseling service. But what struck me then was, the answer is probably no. But even if you did, my guess is, okay, if you went to Kelly and said, listen, I need God to help me with this. I got an issue and I need your counseling. Well, is it being gay? Because I can help you with that. I have all sorts of information about how Jesus doesn't want you to be gay. Assume, I don't know. Right? Oh, well, no. Maybe also. But I want to start on this other problem. I love bestiality. And it's funny you should mention that being gay is like bestiality because I love the bestiality. Let's all have that going on in our lives. How do you discuss it? What is this conversation with bestialists? Is that, I don't know, sound like? I don't know. Don't ask. Don't tell me if you do know. But so suppose you go to her and you say, I know you've compared the two and you have extensive experience, presumably, with counseling people who come to you because they're gay and claim they don't want to be, or there's a gay person in their family and they don't want them to be either gay or in their family if they can't change the gay part. Something like that, right? Well, we have lots of literature about that. Okay, but you've made this comparison to bestiality and I have this problem, either myself or I'm asking for a friend, right? Whatever it is. But my guess is if you come to her and say, I need counseling on the bestiality problem that I'm having, or my friend is having, you don't know her, she lives in Canada. But can I have your help? My guess is she would be like, nope, I'm dropping you. I don't have any advice for you. I don't want to talk to you about that. I'm not counseling you with that at all. That's too far for me. Which then, of course, you could then say, well, that is interesting because you compared being gay to bestiality and you're only too anxious to counsel people about being gay, but you won't talk about the bestiality part. Maybe the two of them aren't that similar after all, and your comparison is stupid and useless and pointless, and you don't even believe it. Because, do you have talking points? Is there a book you can recommend to me about how I can Jesus the bestiality out of my life? Maybe there is one. There's niche everything. But my guess is that when push comes to shove, she doesn't really believe that comparison. So, that's not going to stop her from making it, of course. It's got tremendous effect. Do we really care about what's in the article, though? I don't know. Probably not. But I will read you this much. The evidence for this charge here comes from I guess they have the agreement that you would sign if you're trying to engage Kelly Johnson's counseling services. The company she calls Onward Christian Counseling Services, like Onward Christian Counselors marching as to a therapy session or whatever, I'm sure that's where it comes from. It is, of course, supposed to be Bible-based pastoral counseling. And, like I said, the evidence comes from a link to its 2017 operating agreement, which lays out the corporate bylaws for the company and embraces a number of socially conservative beliefs about LGBTQ plus people and women's reproductive rights. The agreement states that Onward Christian Counseling Services is grounded in the belief that sex is offensive to God if, and God is checking, if it is not between a man and a woman married to each other. Don't get excited. It does say married to each other. It puts being gay, bisexual, or transgender in the same category as someone who has sex with animals or family members, even if the animals are family members, calling all of these examples of sexual immorality. We believe, and the Bible teaches, the Bible doesn't teach it. It's there. You got to do the teaching. The Bible's just a book. It's an inanimate object, man, like guns. Anyway, that any form of sexual immorality, such as adultery, fornication, homosexuality, bisexual conduct, bestiality, incest, pornography, or any attempt to change one's sex, and really, does it end there? There's probably a bunch of other things too. Halloween candy is around. Can't have sex with Halloween candy. That doesn't say that in the Bible, but I assume that is also sexually immoral. But, no one has said so. And I am about fact-based, and I'm reading the Bible and interpreting it strictly. So, how about it, Snickers bar? Oh, well, there's plenty around now. And it is called fun size. It doesn't look that fun to me, but, that's what it's called. And, I guess if they were more explicit about it, if they made a sex size, then we would all know for sure what to do. But, the Bible, it won't let you. Anyway, she's got a whole list of things that Christians like her don't like. It is said that they're listed explicitly in the Bible, though they're not. But they believe a lot of things that are in the Bible. Like, as it turns out, that Noah's Ark is real and that they have the plans for them and that they involve an elevator and a theater as well. So I didn't realize they had a screening room on the Ark, but they've built a biblically accurate, except for the emergency exits, stairwells, elevators, high-tech theater, exhibits, etc. At the theme park for which Mike Johnson was the attorney and spokesperson for quite a while. We got to mention that the other day. Now, with all of this craziness circulating around him, it makes it all the more ridiculous that the Washington Post went with that theme and headline, House Speaker Mike Johnson's Louisiana hometown, guided by faith and family, and also Noah's Ark amusement parks, etc., etc. So Amanda Marcotte, of course, had plenty to say about that, and she wrote the other day about it. Let's see. I mentioned to you that she had compared Mike Johnson to the weirdness of incels on the internet, and I thought maybe we'd let her make her case about that from her piece the other day in Salon. Sexual anarchy. That's in quotes, and I guess that's something that he must have said. Anarchy, everybody. You got to look out for that. Like fentanyl in the Halloween candy, which, again, yeah, they're telling you again, watch out for fentanyl in your kids' Halloween candy. And as I told you, everybody who made the fentanyl to put in the Halloween candy dies because they're in the same room with the fentanyl, and they never hand out the candy. It's just like a virulent disease that kills its victims immediately. Ironically, it's not that dangerous in pandemic terms because no one lives long enough to spread it to everyone else. Remember, cops everywhere. If you even say, every time someone says the word fentanyl, a cop drops dead. So that's how deadly it is. So watch out. Check your kids' Halloween candy for it because, as you know, like COVID, kids are immune. So there's not a problem, but there is because it turns deadly once they get it home. It's a delayed reaction, long fuse fentanyl. That's what we're finding out about. It's another stupid thing. Anyway, sexual anarchy, like rainbow fentanyl, not really happening. New House Speaker Mike Johnson showcases the incelization of the modern GOP. The Louisiana congressman's career, the subheader reads, has been centered around his bitter obsession with other people's sex lives. It's a theory. Let's read it. Ahead of his sudden ascension to House Speaker late last week, the media had little time to vet Representative Mike Johnson thoroughly, and because he sucks in so many ways, it's been hard for his critics to settle on one of his many evil inclinations to focus on. He's a Christian nationalist. He's an election denier. He wants to destroy Medicare and Social Security. He's a fan of neo-Nazi conspiracy theories. And as Brian Beutler of Off Message, his new outlet, writes, typecasting an opposition leader may be tedious, but it's politically necessary. Democrats have benefited from the fact that the most famous Republican villains have one standout trait that defines their personality. Representative Jim Jordan of Ohio is a pugnacious bully. Representative Marjorie Taylor, Murdery Trader Green, as I call her, is a loudmouth Karen, and Kevin McCarthy of California is a spineless suck-up. But so far, no single narrative about Johnson has emerged. Which of the many flavors of right-wing radical is best to focus on? As I offered in my newsletter Friday, Amanda tells us, what stands out to me about Johnson, and I suspect will be compelling to most people, is what a sinister little creep he is. The man gives off strong incel energy, and his elevation really showcases how much of the politics of bitter sexual obsession have come to dominate the Republican Party. Journalists and Democratic researchers have been carefully compiling a couple decades worth of quotes from Johnson, who flat out rejects the First Amendment prohibition against government-imposed religion. Instead, he falsely claims the founders wish to impose his deeply fundamentalist faith on the public on the grounds that we, quote, depend upon religious and moral virtue to, quote, prevent political corruption and the abuse of power. Johnson is lying, of course, as demonstrated by the fact that he helped lead the effort to steal an election for Donald Trump, which was a corrupt abuse of power on behalf of a man lacking all moral value. As usual with these right-wing freaks, the Jesus chatter is just a thin cover for the real fixation, fury at other people for having all the sexy fun times. Johnson warned that legalized same-sex marriage is, quote, the dark harbinger of chaos and sexual anarchy that could doom even the strongest republic. What is sexual anarchy, I wonder? All right, well, anyway, if only it were that exciting, it says parenthetically. Most same-sex marriages, like most straight ones, are harbingers of binge-watching TV from a well-worn couch. Yeah. He's repeatedly described homosexuality with terms like sinful, destructive, deviant, and bizarre. He, like all these bigots, compared same-sex marriage to the right of, quote, a person to marry his pet. Good old Santorum stuff, right, from way back when. No, he has not backed off of those positions, and when asked on Fox News about it this week, he said, go pick up a Bible. The full quote, as I recall seeing everywhere, if you want to know my worldview, you haven't had time to vet me, my worldview, pick up a Bible. That's my worldview. Boy, oh boy. Anyway, watch out for the stoning. In truth, the Bible is not nearly as interested in policing people's sex lives as Johnson is. Not that it should matter, since this is not a theocracy. Nor would the thing that he imposes be really a theocracy either. There's no theocratic element to it. It's invocation of God, but it's really just an excuse to beat up people he doesn't like and repress them. So it's not a religion that's doing it. It's just a convenient excuse for carrying out his weird fantasies. This level of outrage about the acrobatic sex lives he imagines other people have draws more on the incel-style fantasy than anything in Scripture. See, it's not Christian. In true incel fashion, Johnson is haunted by all the erotic adventures he imagines the straight ladies of America are having when he's not in the room. When New York's Irene Carmon, New York's magazine that is, Irene Carmon interviewed him in 2015. Oh, good call. He blamed legal abortion for school shootings. Wow, that's a connection. Saying, when you break up the nuclear family, which they didn't do, when you tell a generation of people that life has no value, no meaning, that it's expendable, then you do wind up with school shooters. Nor was that a one-off. In 2016, he gave a speech in which he blamed feminism, liberal divorce laws, and the sexual revolution for mass shootings. Also bear attacks. Not him, but that was another branch of the Republican Party. So, there's a lot of reasons why there's so many guns around. Okay. In his view, Johnson agrees, or in this view, rather, I should say, Johnson agrees with mass shooters who claim they were driven to it because of women's sexual freedom. In the year before, Johnson blamed male violence on women's sexuality. The incel-identified killer Elliot Rodger went on a shooting spree in California, claiming he was forced to do it to punish the sluts who had sex with other men while he remained a virgin. Since then, there's been a rash of violent incidents, some quite deadly, conducted by men who employ the same logic. Female sexual autonomy offends them, and they must be punished with pain and death. And it's weird, but yeah, it's actually an excellent point. Johnson doesn't imagine that he's doing that. He's just waving a Bible around and saying, because we've strayed from the Bible, there are shootings. But he gets explicit and says it's sexual anarchy and sexual revolution that has done it. It's breaking up the family, devaluing life, and that's driving people to go and become mass shooters. And the mass shooters are saying that too. And so at some level you have to say, well, there's an important message here. But what Amanda's pointing out here is the message isn't truth, it's craziness. And so what's happening here is, to the extent that you disbelieve the crazy mass shooters' manifestos, Mike Johnson believes it. Mike Johnson is reading shooters' manifestos and saying, yes, these are truth tellers. They've gone off the rails, true. So either you can expect Mike Johnson to do the same soon, or he never really believed what he professed to be believing. But he's essentially endorsing the worldview of these mass shooters' manifestos. Let's make him Speaker of the House. Well, what harm could it do? That's kind of not great. Continuing with the article here, though, as David Futrell, maybe, who has tracked incel forums at his blog, We Hunted the Mammoth, has detailed over the years, at the center of incel ideology is a simple claim that women cannot be trusted with the decision of who to be in a sexual relationship with. If women are allowed freedom of choice in their romantic endeavors, incel thinking posits, they'll be too preoccupied with sleeping around to settle down. And that women's gallivanting leaves men, especially beta males, lonely and frustrated. Womp womp. Oh, where's I have that, right? Oh, poor beta males. Well, everybody who's lonely and frustrated is one of those, I guess. So, women have to be locked down for the good of society, by which they mean men, or really, just those men who fear that they can't get a wife without coercion, right? If they're all around there sleeping around and having abortions, then society dies because we're not reproducing, and women, I guess, need to be, like they said, locked down. And look, somebody has to have reproductive sex with all of the undesirable men, or else humans disappear from the face of the earth. That's the logic. And if you don't think that's right, then logic leads me to say, well, if we're having problems populating the earth, the answer to that is mass murder. All right, well, that doesn't seem to follow to me, so maybe this isn't really working. Anyway, Johnson, as it turns out, has similar views. He wants to lock women down into unhappy marriages with abortion bans. Oh, and covenant marriage, which is he's involved in as well. Oh, look, there it is. In the next paragraph. And in a twist that incels will love, he wants to throw away the key. He's long been outspoken against no-fault divorce, which allows someone to simply leave because they no longer want to be married. These laws don't just benefit those in garden variety unhappy marriages. By lifting the burden to prove their suffering in court, abused women have an easier time escaping. By lifting the burden to prove it, right? Okay. That's why liberalized divorce laws led to a 20% decline in female suicides. Johnson's own marriage was licensed under the covenant law in Louisiana. Couples who get married with that license have almost no right to divorce and can only do so if they prove adultery or physical abuse. Religious conservatives passed covenant marriage laws in the 90s with much fanfare, but almost no couples opted in, because why would you? And it's no wonder. If I don't trap you, I know you'll leave isn't really the marriage proposal of romantic dreams. But it is, of course, the guiding view of incels when it comes to relationships. Johnson is such a weirdo about sex that it might be hard to get people to believe it. Luckily, there are a lot of clips showing the creepy obsession with controlling women that really drives home the incel vibe Johnson is throwing, such as joking, quote-unquote joking, that his wife spends all her time, quote, on her knees. You remember that one? That was right off the bat from the speaker's rostrum. Okay. How he talks about women like he's a villain in The Handmaid's Tale. Embedded here is a tweet from Biden-Harris HQ saying, here's Johnson railing against Roe v. Wade, arguing that if women were forced to give birth to more able-bodied workers, Republicans wouldn't try to cut Social Security and Medicare. Yeah, that is pretty weird and grim. There are still many in the punditry who are confused about why Christian conservatives like Johnson glommed onto Trump, a thrice-married chronic adulterer who touches the Bible like it'll burn him. But, of course, it was never really about Jesus. What Trump and the men who worship him share is anger that any woman would have the right to say no to a date, to a marriage, to having your baby. It's why Trump has a long history of sexual assault. And it's why men like Johnson embrace a religion, quote unquote, that is hyper-focused on caging women like they're farm animals, and why they resent gay people for their perceived sexual adventures. It's a coalition of men who fear, often for very good reason, that their repulsive personalities exclude them from a world where sexual expression requires consent. Johnson's now the most powerful Republican in Congress. The incelization of the GOP is complete. Is it? Isn't there really more incelizing that they could be doing? Sure, absolutely. No problem. We'll see what we can come up with. And in fact, there's even more. And Amanda immediately abandons her pledge to hyper-focus on that one, and moves to other equally crazy and equally creepy, weird ones, like Mike Johnson's Satanic Panic. Her latest piece in Salon, How Evangelical Delusions Trained Republicans to Love Trump's Lies. That does bear some exploration, maybe in the few minutes before the 10 o'clock break. If you believe Noah's Ark was real and demons come out of the TV, that's just a small jump to embrace the big lie, which doesn't appear to have anything to do with religion in my view, but we'll see how Mike Johnson gets there. Ours is an age, she begins, where once hoary cliches have been given new life by the rise of right-wing authoritarianism. The banality of evil. First, they came for the fill in the blank. 2 + 2 = 5. Then there's this famous quote, translated from Voltaire, those who can make you believe in absurdities can make you commit atrocities. That's the one that popped into my mind when I read that newly elected Speaker of the House Mike Johnson believed demons were attacking his family through the TV set. Yeah, that's often happening. Johnson largely managed to keep his name out of the national news before his ascendance to the highest-ranking Republican on Capitol Hill. That's why he won, as Republicans hoped to conceal his far-right radicalism under the veil of ignorance. But prior to the current unearthing of Johnson's long history of creepy and fascistic behavior, he did get a small amount of national attention in September 2022 for posting an 80s-style satanic panic about a cartoon show on FX. Devilish Danny DeVito cartoon sparks Gop satanic panic, read a Daily Beast headline in September of last year. Disney and FX have decided to embrace and market what is clearly evil. That definitely deserves horror dramatic music. That was Johnson talking about a series called Little Demon. And, demon, right? But anyway, Little Demon, which ironically is a comedy show about how the devil's daughter has declined to become the Antichrist. Oh, so good news, right? Johnson describes sprinting to change the channel from the trailer, lest the tendrils of hell emanating from this show, which also stars Aubrey Plaza, it's noted here, somehow snag his children. Despite being roundly mocked on social media for these hysterics, he doubled down on his podcast, insisting this is not frivolous, lighthearted entertainment, but serious, eternal business. Yes, he argued, people are literally going to hell for laughing at Danny DeVito playing a satirical version of the Prince of Darkness. This is, after all, the same politician who once fought to secure taxpayer funding for a Noah's Ark-based theme park. Yes, he did so out of the conviction that a literal flood wiped out all life on Earth except an old man, his family, and a boat full of animals around 2300 BC. Never mind that there are historical records of thriving, well-documented civilizations like Mesopotamia and Egypt at the time, and they did not disappear into a flood. That is weird. The Noah exhibit even claimed dinosaurs were on the boat. That's how it explains those guys, which did not stop Johnson from arguing that what we read in the Bible are actual historical events. Well, okay. It does seem like he's going to have a hard time weaving all of that together. All right. Well, perhaps we'll continue on with this. Perhaps we'll move on. But okay, now we can enter this into the record. He's scared about possible satanic cartoons. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Roots Radio. Well, I was going to jump out of this and move on to other topics, but she does move pretty quickly on to I don't know, she makes a good segue here, I think, for both for the article and for the rest of the show. But where do we leave it? Oh, yes, right. So he's scared that, or he allegedly jumped up out of his seat to change the channel, even though everybody has remotes these days, to prevent his kids from seeing the rest of the 10 seconds of promo on FX, presumably, for this cartoon show, because the devil was coming through his TV set. And he totally meant it, because he really believes in everything. All right, whatever. So where were we here? Right, he believes that what we read in the Bible are actual historical events. Be sober, be vigilant, because your adversary, depending on your biblical worldview, the adversary, the devil, prowls around like a roaring lion, seeking whom he may devour, Johnson wrote on Facebook, which everyone wanted to read, quoting the Bible to justify his belief that a cartoon show is literally demon-possessed. I was reminded, Amanda says, of a quote from Carl Sagan's classic defense of science, The Demon-Haunted World. The Bible is full of so many stories of contradictory moral purpose that every generation can find scriptural justification for nearly any action it proposes, from incest, slavery, mass murder, to the most refined love, courage, and self-sacrifice. As I argued on Monday, which I think we just read, Johnson's career is a perfect example. Johnson's starting position is clearly a desire to prop up a patriarchal system that oppresses women and LGBTQ people. The Bible is backfill. It's there as rationalization, not reason. It's important to understand that most fundamentalists like Johnson, quote, believe that Noah's Ark was real or Satan controls Disney in a very different way than most people understand the word believe. This is interesting. It's not an assertion about reality in the same sense as saying, for instance, that October 31st is Halloween. It is, by the way, and this is the proof of it. Thank you. Yes. Case closed, as Darth might say it. An assertion is valued for how it makes them feel or whether it helps them get power. That's interesting. And I think I want to just throw out there the understanding, the possible understanding that get power could mean political power in secular society, or it could mean makes them feel like the Spirit is moving them in church, for instance. That could be their view of getting power as well. It's not mentioned here, but I think that's probably worth acknowledging. So an assertion is valued for how it makes them feel or whether it helps them get power. Evangelical culture is full of these quasi-beliefs, from creationism to urban legends about everyday encounters with angels, or that there's fentanyl in your kid's candy, I suppose. We can know that they don't really believe half the crap they say because they don't act like people who believe it. When they get sick, most creationists go running to medical doctors whose practice only works because the theory of evolution is true. Johnson wasn't really afraid his TV was a portal for demonic possession, or he would have thrown the whole machine out. And certainly no one literally believes Donald Trump is a Bible-believing Christian, but since it suits their purposes to claim he is, they will, quote, believe he is saved by the cleansing powers of Jesus Christ. Belief is less about actual views on the nature of reality and more about claims that serve their personal or political purposes. This is interesting and a good way of understanding their idea about belief. Do you really believe that? Yes, but I don't have the same definition of the word believe that you do. Oh, okay. I mean, not okay, but I now understand why you are wrong, but all right. Well, let's see. Belief is less about actual views on the nature of reality and more about claims that serve their personal or political purposes. I often, she says, refer to an illuminating 2008 Pathos blog post by Fred Clark regarding his efforts when he was within the church or with the church to dissuade people from spreading the lie that a satanic cult secretly ran Procter & Gamble. You're old enough to remember that one? That was an 80s satanic panic. Early 80s, I think. As he wrote, no one is stupid enough to really believe such a story. When they were presented with evidence that P&G is not a satanic cult, they did not express relief, which is what a person sincerely misled would do. They got defensive and angry. That's because it felt good to them to claim P&G is a satanic cult. It allowed them to feel self-righteous and titillated at the same time, an intoxicating combination that no fact can compete with. That's a great explanation for it. This is why Trump has done so well with evangelicals, despite his utter contempt for their faith and his lifetime of unrepentant philandering. His life philosophy, where what is true, quote unquote true, is whatever he wants to believe, fits nicely with the demon-haunted rhetoric of the Christian right, where Noah's Ark is real, but science is not. The belief that the election was stolen from Trump isn't a statement of fact, but of loyalty to the tribe. That's why most Republicans now claim Trump didn't try to steal the election. That is where they are these days. Not that they deny that it was a theft. That they also deny. But that's not the reason why they claim that Trump didn't try to steal it as a semantic disagreement. But they rather now very often will tell you the events that people point to when they say, here's Trump trying to steal the election, didn't happen. That's crazy, but they love to say it, as if they simply didn't see the months of loud, showy efforts to do so. They know in their hearts it's not true, but the false thing feels better to say. That's why it's not a mere sideshow when Christian politicians like Johnson sign off on goofy beliefs in satanic TV shows or ark-riding dinosaurs. This is not a minor eccentricity. It's a whole worldview. one where there is no belief too silly or impossible, so long as it serves the political goals of the Christian right. I do wonder where in the Bible, that being his worldview, it says anything about dinosaurs on the ark. Of course, I mean, I guess it doesn't denote which animals were there, just that two of every one was there. And I guess the biblical account of the ark does say that there were some very wacky sounding mythological creatures involved too. So I guess we can't really point to that. But it is interesting that it doesn't say anything about giant killer lizards that eat everything being on the ark, or how you collected to it. Well, God made it possible to, I don't know, hypnotize male and female Tyrannosaurus Rex. And all right, whatever. Anyway, as Voltaire noted, it's not just about the absurdity, but the atrocity. Because they are so comfortable, quote, believing that which they know not to be true, it was a breeze for Republicans to go along with Trump's big lie, and therefore the atrocities that were committed in service of it, such as the Capitol riot. That is some transition. It didn't happen until the very end of the article, but we're glad to have seen it eventually anyway. So that could lead us to discussion of the rest of the items that I have in store for you. Or I could just jump around in a lightning round, which I think is probably what I'm going to end up doing, because I don't have any way to segue per se to this story, which is also weird. And Rosalind McGregor, maybe you caught wind of this one from WOOD TV, Channel 8 in Grand Rapids. But anyway, this, rather astonishing piece of news. State representative pays tribute to men acquitted in governor kidnap plot. That is the headline from WOOD TV. And I forget who was passing this one around over the weekend, but thanks for bringing it to my attention. Ken Kolker is the writer credited on the site. And here's the story. A West Michigan state legislator paid tribute Friday to two men acquitted, at least they were the ones who were acquitted anyway, in the failed plot to kidnap Governor Gretchen Whitmer, with Representative Rochelle Smith, not Smith, but Smith without the H, saying she was doing so on behalf of the state, which I guess if they passed a resolution in the House, she's got some official imprimatur behind it. But that's interesting. How did you even get to, well, let's read and find out what actually happened here. Not so fast, though, the governor's office responded, because that would be kind of odd. Is the whole state really uniting in paying tribute to people who, granted, were acquitted, but were, at least for a time, suspected of criminal activity, provable criminal activity, that would have resulted in the governor's kidnapping? We're here to recognize Bill and Mike Null for their unfortunate involvement in this scandal, if you will. I'm just not even sure what to call it. And that's what I'm going to call it. Smith, a Republican of Shelbyville, so that sets them at odds with Simpsons fans right away, said at an event in, where are they? Allegan? Allegan. You want to tell me how that one is pronounced? It looks like the name of the line of contact lens sterile products. It was Allergan or something like that. Allergan? I don't know. Anyway, Allegan. Allegan. Sorry, Michiganders. Not familiar with that one. Anyway, if you would just accept these tributes on behalf of the state of Michigan and our office as your representative in the 43rd District, Smith said, I think, she's got a framed document of some kind, which the photo caption says she's presenting a proclamation in support of William and Michael Null, who are at the far right, as others have pointed out, some brilliant exemplars of the master race. Eesh. Now, let me see. I'm trying to enlarge the picture to see if I can see. I mean, it is printed out on, that kind of official parchment, state of Michigan. There's a seal. Be it known that or something, or no, what does it say? To William Nell, actually. So I'm not sure how official this thing is, although it's got a little seal with some ribbon on it and everything. Let's read on and see what it is she's handing over here, if it's described here. And it may be that the reporters didn't inquire into it far enough to find out what she's got in her hand. This goes beyond the pale. Press Secretary Stacey LaRouche wrote in an email to News 8, and I'm trying to make it catch on that beyond the pale is a no-no phrase. I'm only half kidding about that, but, okay. I'm like 3/4 kidding about that. Anyway, these types of actions normalize and incite violence against our political figures. That's true. And only serve to shake our faith in our values and our institutions. This tribute will further encourage and embolden radical extremists trying to sow discord and harm public officials or law enforcement. Well, that seems right. Smith gave William and Michael Null of Allegan County, again, I hope I got that right, the hometown hero treatment on the steps of the Allegan County Courthouse, along with their defense attorneys. The Null brothers, that is a weird name, were among 14 men charged in state and federal courts in a plot to kidnap Whitmer in 2020. 9 were convicted and sent to prison, including the ringleaders, Adam Fox and Barry Croft Jr., despite arguments that they were entrapped by the FBI. 5 were acquitted, including the Null brothers and Eric Molitor, who were accused of supporting leaders by participating in military-style drills and traveling to see Whitmer's second home in northern Michigan. The tribute honored the Nulls for their, quote, courage, unflagging spirit, and dedication to our state and the founding principles of our beloved nation. It thanked them for keeping alive our cherished liberties. And again, it's a tribute. It's just referred to as tribute. It doesn't tell us what official status, if any, it has. The men could have given up in the face of a government that betrayed them and, quote, secret police forces that concocted the kidnapping plot for political gain, the tribute states. But at great personal risk, each of the brothers stood his ground, met his government inquisitors in court, and soundly defeated them. The tribute continues. I don't understand why that even deserves tribute per se, but okay. Each of the brothers, the tribute says, here's a closer view of it, is an outstanding example of the kind of person who is not content to sit idly while the forces of tyranny attack our republic. Rawr. The people of the state of Michigan owe a debt of gratitude to Mr. Null, the tribute says. I guess there's one for William and one for Michael. I don't know. I guess they don't live together. And here's a close-up view of this. And basically, so this is a inflated participation trophy, essentially. Rachel Smith formulated it in her office and doctored it up to look like something official. It is on, a nice certificate type of paper. There's a thing that says State of Michigan on it. Maybe it's supposed to be the Great Seal of Michigan. And underneath it says special tribute as opposed to resolution or anything that was actually adopted by an official body. Because I was going to say, the Michigan State Legislature, even one house isn't going to pass this thing. So she just doctors something up and gives them. All right, so to Michael Null, let it be known that it is with shared commitment to the noble ideals of our country that we join with all Michiganders in saluting Michael Null as he is honored for his courage, unflagging spirit, and dedication to our state and the founding principles of our beloved nation. We proudly add our own thanks for the contributions he made and continues to make in keeping alive our cherished liberties. So it's a bad formulation of what happened here. Michael Null could have given up. His government, state, and federal betrayed him. It sent members of its secret police forces to concoct a plot to kidnap, quote-unquote kidnap, Gretchen Whitmer, and to persecute innocent men in this government-orchestrated conspiracy for the purpose of political theater and political gain. Like a proclamation of this sort would never pass either house, no matter who controlled it. It's just poor. It's just one person's idea of, something they wanted to say to somebody. So they did, but they do it on behalf of the state, which is wrong. In falsely charging Michael Null, the government and their secret police sought not only to deprive Mr. Null of his liberty, but to taint and defame him and millions of other patriotic Americans who oppose tyranny, because he's totally not involved with any of them, because he's involved in no plot whatsoever. So there you go. I don't know. And who specifically opposed illegal COVID-19 lockdowns and related tyrannical power grabs. Had Michael Null simply lost faith and surrendered, the full nature of the government's false flag operation would never have been known. False flag. Instead, at great personal risk, Michael Null bravely stood his ground, met his government inquisitors in court, soundly defeated them. His victory further exposed the depravity of his government, which is now praising him, and the corruption within state and federal secret police forces which masquerade as legitimate law enforcement. Michael Null is an outstanding example of the kind of person who is not content to sit idly while the forces of tyranny attack our republic. Through his courageous efforts to expose the government's false flag, Whitmer conspiracy has made it clear that we all have opportunities each and every day to put our love of country to good use in helping out our fellow citizens. What? We all benefit from the patriotism and courage of a man like Michael Null. The people of the state of Michigan owe a debt of gratitude to Mr. Null. She has bolded that type. In special tribute, therefore, this document is signed and dedicated to commend Michael Null as he is recognized for excellence in service to the republics of the state of Michigan, which isn't one, and the United States of America. Signed, Rochelle Smith, State Representative, the 43rd District, spelled out, the 102nd Legislature at Lansing, Friday, October 27th, 2023, and then a seal of the House of Representatives of the state of Michigan with a little red and blue ribbon underneath it, signifying nothing. It's just something they typed up and put on a souvenir certificate, and she signed with no one else's agreement, but affixed the seal of the House of Representatives to it. And honestly, that should probably lead to an ethics inquiry inside the Michigan State House, but, she'll get a reprimand for it at most. Anyway, then there's some ceremony, right? They gave it to him, and then they said things. I'm glad there's still justice in America, said William Null, who said he and his brother spent 2 months in jail. I spent 30 days in solitary confinement and in another week or two in max security, he said. I wonder whether that's actually true. I doubt it very much. Pre-trial, max security, solitary, I don't know. He said they did nothing illegal and that it was his smiling face that led to his arrest. Okay. Then there's more, dopey gobbledygook down here, but then an explanation. I guess Smith was reluctant to answer questions about the tribute and whether it was on behalf of state government. There's no question that it isn't, actually. But she says this, well, I am a representative of the state, she said. This is from my office, the 43rd District State Representative, Rochelle Smith. They are my constituents, and I'm here to come out on behalf of them and support them in their efforts, and grateful that the charges are dismissed and they are found innocent. They're found not guilty, of course, not innocent, but those are two different things. But that's all our justice system affords. Anyway, but she's asked, what's the provenance of this thing? And the answer is, we printed it in our office and spruced it up to look like something official, but it isn't. So that's the answer of that one. I also thought it was rather interesting, again, he's paying tribute to people who were acquitted for their role in the plot to kidnap the governor. And of course, I immediately thought, wow, right-wing Republican politician. Almost certainly the case that her website somewhere in the last couple of days came out with a condemnation of Hamas and demanded that others condemn Hamas for, among other things, kidnapping. So I thought that was just a brilliant, little bit of political irony. Not that anybody really cares certainly no one cares whether Rochelle Smith is caught in her hypocrisy or not, because I think we all just assumed that was inevitable. But it was an interesting twist to be giving out fake certificates honoring people who participated in kidnapping plots here in America, but demanding that half of America is not sufficient in its condemnation of Hamas kidnapping activity, which I don't think is even true. Most people are very thoroughly convinced of the need to condemn Hamas's kidnapping activity. I'm sure there are some holdouts, but just interesting that she's issuing proclamations in the same week of thank you for trying to kidnap people here in America and damn you for trying to kidnap people in Israel. But she's doing it out of her patriotism and love for America. A-okay to kidnap Americans, but I'll really get my back up when you kidnap people on the other side of the planet, when there are political points to be scored for condemning it. So there you go. I thought that was rather interesting, to say the least. Let's see. Do we want to throw in a couple more other weird stories? I am reminded through the Hills liaison office in my email inbox that the battles are about to begin over the various, what shall we say, resolutions condemning and or censuring one another in the House. The Hills emailed news alert letting me know that Santos, Tlaib, Green, all three of them, the House looks to police its own members. That's their story that they're linking to here. What's their title? Michael Schnell writing this. Santos, Tlaib, Green, House looks to police its own members. We told you about all of those things. I guess the question is are they letting us know, are these things going to move today or sometime this week? Okay, the three resolutions up for a vote this week, expelling George Santos, censuring Rashida Tlaib, and censoring Murdery Trader Green, will put a spotlight on Johnson's ability to manage the fractious GOP conference and steer the entire chamber after a blistering 3-week fight that ended with him clinching the gavel. There are various ways that he could be clinching the gavel that I could think of that would put him at odds with his biblical worldview, but, you know, who am I to poison your brain with such thoughts? All right, I don't think there's anything new in this. I just wanted to take a quick look and see when we might expect these things to move. But yeah, now everybody's got the privileged resolution bug. It's going to make it very difficult for the speaker to control the agenda if it's now generally known that everything can be derailed within a couple of days with privileged resolutions. In fact, I mean, you know, you could counsel, say, I don't know, the Democratic caucus to file 15 of them every week so that he can't bring his stupid bills to the floor. But, yeah, the problem is that he's got everybody over a barrel because they want to see some action on Israel support, Ukraine support. Maybe even they care deeply about the other more nebulous issues or even the southern border that are included in all of that. I don't know. So they won't want to block it all, but it'll be awesome when Murdery Trader Green brings these things. But when people bring them about her, that'll be a huge waste of time, and we got to stop this, and it's out of control. And we'll see whether there's any movement in the Republican ranks to change the rules. I mean, there's still that. Not only does everybody have access to the privileged resolutions, but there's still the one member only moving to vacate the chair that lingers out there, and no indication that there are any plans to change that. So, all right. Well, at any rate, the bottom of the hour break coming up shortly, after which we will check in with Joan Macabre, who will tell us more basically about how horrific Mike Johnson himself actually is and what he might have in store for us. Okay, we'll throw in one more thing. Oh, I should have gotten to this story. Well, maybe that'll be a Friday one, but let's throw in one more sort of random one before the close of the segment because we did already mention Israel, so there's some segue here. This is a weird report from The Guardian on last Friday, the 27th, Richard Luscombe reporting Ron DeSantis's claim, I did not catch this claim until it was debunked, claimed that he sent military equipment to Israel, that he and or Florida had, combined their forces, used his authority as governor to weigh in on this international crisis. Well, as it turns out, the Florida governor has received pushback for falsely declaring that he worked with Israel's consul general in Miami to send weapons. What's this all about? Well, we'll take a look at it for approximately a minute and a half. Ron DeSantis is receiving pushback from Israeli diplomats, Florida Democrats, and the White House after he falsely claimed credit for a gun-running operation to assist Israel's military operations in Gaza. Famously procuring all their weapons are the IDF, getting them from Ron DeSantis in Florida. The Florida governor and a 2024 presidential hopeful declared on Thursday that he had worked with Israel's consul general in Miami to send military equipment, including drones, body armor, and helmets. His office, according to Reuters, said it had worked to, quote, get weapons and ammunition to Israel through private parties as part of his high-profile rescue operation, as he called it. The operation involved sending humanitarian supplies on chartered planes and returning from Israel hundreds of U.S. citizens who wanted to come home following the Hamas attacks. His boast, however, started to unravel. I can't believe it, but it did in fact start to unravel. Oh, we're late on our music again. When Mayor Elbaz Starinsky, Israel's consul general, told the news agency he had not asked for DeSantis' help and that the governor's involvement was limited to smoothing paperwork requirements for a previously arranged shipment of rifle parts ordered by his government. So that's some astonishing stretch that he made, and it didn't work out. What do you know? Hi, everybody. It's me, David Waldman. Yes, the same guy who interrupts you all the time. Interrupting you one more time just to tell you again, another reminder that your contributions are what keep this show on the air, and Patreon.com, Patreon.com, is still among the easiest ways to make the sustaining subscription donations that keep us afloat. Are you ready for the pep talk about how our Patreon campaign is still going strong and growing? Well, too bad. Yeah, the plain fact is we actually are headed in the wrong direction, and whereas we once had about 175 monthly patrons, we're now actually down below 150. Time to recruit some more. Not exactly the kind of news I wanted to share, but there it is. For those of you in a position to support the show, Patreon.com does make it easy to make those secure, recurring monthly contributions to do so. Patreon.com/KagroX gets you straight to our donation page. We've been through a lot together. The worst of the pandemic, we hope. The worst of the insurrection, we hope. So go ahead and treat yourself. You don't need an excuse. Give yourself the gift of a little something you enjoy in life. Support the show. And of course, if you happen to prefer using PayPal or even the Square Cash app, we're up and running on those options too. So thanks again, everyone, for all your support. We couldn't, or at least shouldn't, do it without you. Hope you'll be on board soon too. Thanks for all your support. All right, welcome back now to the Kagro in the Morning Show here on Netroots Radio. And, I don't know what's going on in the floor, if anything, but, just waiting to see if Joan Macabre can make it by. I mean, it is Halloween. There could be extra preparations going on. She's out buying candy or, I don't know, a costume maybe. Broadcasting live from Spirit Halloween. But okay, in her at least temporary absence, although, who knows what could be going on. We have, of course, it's a good thing she writes everything down, right? That way we know at least what's been on her mind over the past couple of days, and we can have a pretty good idea probably of what's coming up. Let's start off down her list of diaries, and if she joins us midway through the conversation, that'll be fine too. But first up chronologically, that is in reverse chronological order, House Democrats need to dust off discharge petition and pass Ukraine aid. Might that be the only way that Ukraine aid is guaranteed to move through Congress, especially if they separate things? And here's my note. Just wrapping up a post, like the latest news. It's late breaking stuff. And then she'll be here with us shortly, and you'll hear the ringy-dingy sound when it happens. And then we'll ask for a sneak preview of what is that post if it isn't already up on the front page. All right. House Democrats need to dust off discharge petition and pass Ukraine aid. Let's run through it so sort of smooth the or grease the skids here, I guess you could say, as she comes in for a late landing. Newly elected MAGA Speaker of the House, Mike Johnson, had his first nationally televised interview on Thursday, and unsurprisingly he chose Fox News' Sean Hannity to conduct it, even though Sean Hannity had been out there campaigning for someone else entirely for Speaker. How weird. Anyway, should not be surprising that Johnson told Hannity what he wanted to hear on Ukraine. He's opposed to President Joe Biden's request for a $105 billion supplemental assistance package for Ukraine and Israel. Johnson, and so therefore the pay for is a poison pill, the cutting of IRS enforcement. Johnson told Hannity that the consensus among House Republicans is that we need to bifurcate those issues, meaning the $61.4 billion in aid that would go to Ukraine has to be handled separately. A separate vote is the best chance the MAGA wing of the Republican conference has to block assistance to Ukraine, a move they might be coordinating with MAGA Senate Republicans. Johnson did concede that it's important for Ukraine to prevail, essentially paraphrasing Senate Minority Leader McConnell's argument. We cannot allow Vladimir Putin to prevail in Ukraine because I don't believe it would stop there. And he believes all sorts of things. So it would probably encourage and empower China to perhaps make a move on Taiwan. We have these concerns, he told Hannity. Johnson met with McConnell earlier on Thursday. Blocking Ukraine funding has been key to the ongoing MAGA fight. True, it's a big concern for them for whatever reason. Of course, service to Putin being the reason, I guess. It derailed the defense appropriations bill for weeks until the hardliners succeeded in getting it stripped out of the bill, and they successfully stripped it from the continuing resolution that averted a government shutdown last month. There is good news for Ukraine funding, however, in that hardliners couldn't keep the $300 million they stripped out of the appropriations bills from getting a separate vote. And, oops, I've lost my place here due to pop-up ads here. Getting a separate vote, and it passed overwhelmingly at that point, 311 to 117. Yes, all the no votes were Republicans, but 101 of them are still supportive of Ukraine, so that's good news. That means Democrats who've been considering a discharge petition to advance Biden's supplement request should think about getting it moving. They'll all be just as reluctant to sign them as they ever have been, but it's worth calling them out on it. That's the arcane legislative process that allows the minority in the House, as you may know, to bring a bill to the floor. It's a difficult task requiring a majority of members to sign on, but there are 101 Republicans who support Ukraine, allegedly, including that group of self-proclaimed moderates who have declared themselves the majority makers, even though they all surrendered to Johnson a few days ago. The threat of bipartisan discharge petitions could put countervailing pressure on Johnson to keep the Ukraine and Israel aid requests combined. Either way, he'd be looking at a messy and potentially damaging floor process, but driving a chunk of Republicans to work with Democrats would be more politically damaging to him than doing what his majority and the majority in the Republican Senate wants. Oh, okay. The majority of Republicans in the Senate, I guess. A discharge petition can only work once, so Democrats have to go big with this. With a minimum of the $64 billion Biden is asking for, it's not the only option for the aid to pass. The Senate could include it in a continuing resolution to keep the government open past the current November 17th deadline, or in an omnibus funding bill later in the year. Those options are also going to be a fight with Johnson and the MAGA crew. Any funding measure will be fraught, but the discharge petition needs to move forward as a bipartisan statement of support for Ukraine and a chance for the dozens of non-MAGA Republicans to start throwing their weight around. So, okay, another threat of discharge petition. Always a long shot, the discharge petition. But it would be particularly sensitive if they could score a victory on that now. I mean, Johnson and the Republican leadership will fight against it tooth and nail. It doesn't matter that the logic means that they would support this because there are enough Republicans who support aid to Ukraine and getting it done now that they should, in theory, back the discharge petition. But the pressure on them not to go that direction will be enormous. And it's only days since they were able to unite the Republican conference on the vote for speakership, despite having fought bitterly over it for 3 weeks. And now that the people who want to wear the moderate mantle among the Republican conference have knuckled under, they're back in the habit of being good soldiers again. Presumably they can be convinced by the leadership to steer clear of the discharge petition. Okay. So, like I said, a long shot that's out there, but if there are any fine points that Joan would like to put on it, well, we can do that. Now, there's more. I would like to save some of these stories for her to take us through, however. So we can put some of these things aside. And I wonder, there are some other things that she might be interested in discussing with us that are on her beat. I thought this was an interesting view here. Oh, you know what? I can save this one for Friday because here she comes. There's our ringy-dingy noise that indicates Joan Macabre on the way in the door. Hey, Joan, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Okay, fine. You sound like you were busy, though. So what's the latest? Is it up on the front page? Are we going to get a sneak preview? It's published.
No, it takes too long to get it published these days. But
yeah, everybody. Oh, what are they trying to make sure your facts are correct? Man,
couldn't
that's
believe
stupid.
it.
Oh my God! Look, news can't wait for truth to happen. We learned this from Twitter or something like that. Anyway, okay, so you've got something in the queue. What's the topic? We can at least figure that out.
Well,
you could probably tell us that, couldn't you?
Israel and
Congress,
Ukraine.
there you go. Okay.
And it's a really, really dickish move from Johnson.
Oh well, is this the IRS offset?
The IRS thing. He's picking a fight with Democrats. He's picking a fight with his own 101 Republicans who support Ukraine aid, and he's really picking a fight with McConnell.
Okay. Even though they just had lunch, isn't that terrible?
Yeah.
McConnell, you should put something in his lunch. Just some gag. I don't know, sneezing powder in the whatever. I don't know what the old school gags. Put a whoopee cushion on his chair at lunch, something like that. All right, put a little Metamucil in the bean soup or whatever.
There you go.
Come on, just a little prank. It's something we do, and he could claim it's something we do to all the new speakers.
It'd have to be like X-Lax in the brownies. I don't think Metamucil acts fast enough.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm just not up to speed on that particular prank anymore. But that's old school too, X-Lax. All right, try it out. All right, but it's actually, it's kind of evil genius linking these two things, or coming up with this thing. Oh, well, offsets. That's a thing we do.
It is as toxic and as poison as you get.
Yeah.
You're trying to make Democrats vote against Israel.
Yeah.
So they have to say, okay, am I going to vote for Israel or am I going to vote for tax cheats?
Yeah. Right.
Am I going to support my president? Am I going to support Israel? Mm-hmm. It's really, really obnoxious and totally expected.
Yeah. Yeah. It's a good one out of the gate for Johnson if you're like rooting for his team, or we're not, but I mean, I've seen dumber things. Like, I don't know if McCarthy could have put this together exactly, although...
Oh, it's not dumb. It's just really, really evil.
Yeah. No, it puts people in a real bind, or potentially could. When you sit there and think about it, when it comes time to vote, and like, all right, well, this is actually just unacceptable and will end up costing us far more than the supposed offset by not being able to collect tax revenues.
Right.
So it's going to end up costing us $28 billion instead of the 14 that we were supposedly worried about. But yeah, it still is, in headline world, ex-congressperson votes against Israel aid. And, if you have a significant constituency or just a significant bunch of hypocrites, like people who say, I love Israel, I can't wait for them all to be killed so that, we can bring on the apocalypse.
Right.
Well, we don't really want that. We'd like to hang around. I think the human race is doing okay, generally speaking. I'd like to keep running for a little while in this race, but it will generate those headlines.
It will generate those headlines. He's also trying. It's just every way you look at this, it's obnoxious.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Now he's trying to get the Senate by November 17th to pass Ukraine aid, Israel aid, and a continuing resolution, or whatever else they're going to be doing to keep the government operating after November 17th.
All separate?
Trying to get the Senate to do all of those things
That is
in 3 weeks.
Yeah.
Doesn't work.
No, it takes about 3 weeks to get one of those things.
Exactly.
If once it's written, much less if they actually have to craft the thing, that's an extra 3 weeks.
Well, and it's obviously just not going to pass muster with the Senate. Senate Democrats are not going to take up a bill
Right.
that slashes one of the key elements of one of their primary accomplishments, the Inflation Reduction Act. Period.
It pays for everything else. It is interesting though, and it was very clever of them in an evil genius sort of a way to say, they'll be able to come out and say, what do you mean? Only in Washington is a spending cut, something.
Yeah.
But
the other problem is, again, and this is an interesting thing that I picked up coming out of this fight. McConnell is explicitly endorsing this as supplemental funding.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Money that doesn't have to be offset. You don't see a lot of Republicans saying, we just find extra money to do this. We don't have to take it from someplace else. That was an important concession, I thought, from McConnell, and it's also important. It's an important point. You don't respond to emergencies by figuring out where else you can take money from if you're the federal government. I mean, families obviously have to.
Yes, but that's because we don't print our own currency.
Right.
Among other things. But that's right. That's true. That's the usual designation, emergency supplemental spending. It usually excuses you from the need to find offsets, and people just don't talk about it in that sense. So this is applying, it's a bit of an apples and oranges thing. Well, we'll have an offset for our emergency spending. Yeah, but that's not the way it works. Yeah, but, we're going to say it anyway, says the guy who's, never been in leadership of any, who's really responsible for crafting and moving legislation style of leadership anyway. But most people don't know that that's the case, that they usually don't bother with offsets for emergency supplementals. But those of us nerds who watch C-SPAN recognize the terminology.
Through the Iraq War.
Right. Yes, exactly. I never offset any
That's
of that.
when Republicans were okay with supplemental funding.
Right. True.
While they were fighting for everything else to be offset, any other spending had to be offset during the Obama administration. The Iraq War never, ever, ever had to be offset.
No, I guess. Well, so they found out that this is the first time I've ever seen them try to offset any war spending of any kind. And okay, well, it's not our war, so there. Okay, I don't know. It seems like a regular war, but okay.
Yeah,
it's good news that we're not
kind of a fight for civilization. Sure.
Even you guys seem to think so. It might be the end of life on Earth, as a matter of fact, in your view. I don't know that we need to offset that. And maybe try that one with him. Well, but if the rapture is coming, who cares if it's offset? That'd be interesting. Yeah, maybe Democrats need to say that. We don't need offsets. This is Armageddon, the rapture. You want to know my worldview? Pick up a Bible. The Bible says this doesn't need to be offset. Huh. Wow. I hadn't thought about that one yet. That makes me a little uncomfortable, but I may try it. Okay.
I would very much like to see where in the Bible it told him to fight the election.
Yeah. That you wouldn't know that part. That's in the Canadian Bible. You don't know that.
Okay.
I don't know. None of what he, I would like to know where in the Bible it says that Noah's Ark had elevators. So, they built that one in that theme park.
Oh, yeah, right.
His theme park.
Okay,
yeah.
This is
biblically accurate, except for,
except for the electricity and the plumbing.
Yeah. And it doesn't float, and it's attached to the ground, and there's no animals on it, and it's got a theater and a cafeteria. But, other than that, it's biblically accurate. We just made a few small adaptations. Yeah. I wonder if they had to comply with local building code. I mean, I assume so, right? In order to get the permits to build the thing, right? But I don't see those in the Bible. How do we know it's biblically accurate? There was no construction code back then. All right. Well, he's a weird guy and he has some weird ideas. And, all you can do is explain that when they say they believe things, that doesn't mean what you think when you understand the word belief. It's a different word. they don't understand things the same way. So there's no point in trying to outlogic them. And I guess that would be fun to point out to them. We're supporting Israel to bring on the rapture. So what's the point of offsetting this stuff? Like that it will be a funny moment for the rest of us, but it won't register with them.
No.
But I would try it anyway.
It would be fun to do anyway, yes.
Yeah, for sure. And in fact, it would be fun in the Senate not to respond to quorum calls and say it was the rapture. Gotcha. It wasn't that we weren't trying to block.
Except
yeah.
they have to show up to explain that.
Yeah,
so,
right.
Kind of.
Send a note. I don't know. Yeah, well, any number of things could account for everybody's mess. The fentanyl and Halloween candy killed everybody.
That'll
rapture
be it.
Killed everybody.
Except that they show up again. So
yeah. Who cares? There's no logic. God brought me.
You don't
back.
need logic.
That's right. I was resurrected.
It's a liberal plot.
Yeah. Well, so a lot of weirdness happening. I guess they're staying and working for the next 3 weeks or so. How long until they take? Oh, it's 18 days until the next shutdown. They might have to work
and
through
as far
then.
as I know, the House is coming off of their 5-day weekend tomorrow. They plan to take up this Israel funding bill on Thursday, but they also have the privilege resolutions of reprimanding and expelling people to deal with too. So, far as I know, they plan to be in until the 17th.
Okay.
Both chambers. I don't know how many weekends it's going to have to be weekends.
There have
probably.
to be some, but really, I mean, are they already planning this weekend? This is pretty late. Like they're coming in tomorrow. Well, I guess some of them will return today to handle pro forma business, and they've got privilege resolutions on Thursday. If they don't want to hang around Friday, Saturday, Sunday, then they're out of here and then back in. Probably not until November 8th because there's elections going on in some states. And even if you're not having an election, election day, I can't go to work. It's a holiday for them. Never a holiday for any of us who have to do the voting. But they got to go and do that. Then by that point, it's already November 8th and they are 10 days from shutdown.
Yes.
And I guess the calendar events that they're using to leverage action on the 17th is don't you want to go home?
For Thanksgiving,
which is the next Thursday. So the previous Friday, something, that's getting this holiday expansion thing. Like, I'm glad they started giving people Wednesday off for Thanksgiving, but these guys are, taking off the previous Friday, and leaving the government
they're
closed.
Supposed to be doing this week.
Oh,
when they come in Wednesday afternoon.
Right.
So they're expelling and reprimanding people. They are doing the Israel funding package, and they are supposedly also doing legislative branch appropriations, interior appropriations, transportation, and housing appropriations.
No, they're not. That's nuts. So each one of those privilege resolutions will take an hour minimum. And probably twice as long in order to, I don't know, do they come with rules, these privilege resolutions, or no?
I assume rules is chugging away right now.
I guess
they're trying to do all of this. But yes, that is all pursuant to a rule.
Okay, so that's an extra hour right there. So 6 hours of debating of which members are going to have their knuckles wrapped. And it may end up that none of them have their knuckles wrapped.
Yeah.
So, all right. And then 4 appropriations bills and an emergency supplemental.
3 appropriations bills.
Oh, okay. I lost count there, but okay. So still more than, honestly, 1 would be probably unlikely to get done.
Yeah.
But they could structure, okay, they're going to be here late. They're going to stay Friday. They'll get 1 done. But to get 3 done, and then, and is the 4th one, is the supplemental a 4th? Or was that among
the supplemental's the 4th?
Okay. All right. So no, not likely. Then they have next week if they don't break and go home.
They have another 3 of the appropriations bills slated for next week.
Oh, so they can't even back up into that. How many appropriations bills did they not pass? Or
8.
how many?
No. Now 7. 7.
Okay.
They did water last week.
Aye. All right.
They
Well, that's
did
more than
manage
half.
to get water done in a day and a half. So, but
Still, yeah, that's a great performance, but a day and a half for any one of these bills. There's nothing in the water appropriations that's highly controversial. So
No.
easy ones take a day and a half in the House.
yeah,
Then they have that other place. What do they call it? Where they need to have 100 million votes just to talk about it. So, yeah, unlikely. I mean, the House, I guess, if they clear their calendar, fine. I mean, they won't. They won't get anywhere near clearing their calendar. And, maybe it's strategic that people should be using privileged resolutions just to befoul the calendar. But then it ends up contributing to a shutdown possibility. So
right.
presumably Democrats won't want to do it, but I don't know. Things could get crazy, and maybe they feel like they have to. So, all right. Well, discharge petitions are flying. The Senate.
I hope discharge petitions are flying. I really hope
I
that
guess
the
that's
House
true.
Democrats have got that petition sitting in wait. Actually, I think there is one.
Okay.
But they could pull it any time now.
All right.
The
so
spinning
it's ready to
committee.
move.
So,
All right. So they want to use that possibly on the Israel funding front, or are there
Ukraine
others?
funding.
Oh, okay. I have the
front.
wrong one. Okay. Yeah, because they could probably get somewhere with an Israel one, but they won't need to because they're going to get this crappy one instead. But
Well,
Ukraine,
they could, do the combination, vote against this one with the alternative of the discharge petition.
That's a good plan, and that'll help them with the with dealing with the press. Well, yes, I voted against this because there's a trap involved, a poison pill, and I have a backup plan that brings a cleaner, or at least less complicated and confounding funding bill to the floor instead. But they won't yargle bargle, even though they say they want to. Okay, so that's a real play.
Yeah. I think it would be a good play. I hope they use it. I hope that they find 5 Republican moderates who say they don't want to play these games.
I think they were
Finally
raptured
to
away.
do it. I mean, they voted unanimously for Johnson, so.
Yeah, right. So they disappeared.
Granted, nobody knew who Mike Johnson was other than that nerdy guy that likes to pray in the well.
Okay.
That should have, raised concerns for everybody. I don't know if everybody knew beforehand that he was praying in the well with his friends, but
They just, whatever. He's the weird guy that goes and has weird prayer meetings. That's fairly common there, so they probably weren't concerned with that one.
doing it in the House chamber is a little over the top.
I guess so. Although, it's always been weird, and having a chaplain is a strange exercise in itself. But then you say, all right, well, there's prayer here already. What do we need to have your extra stuff for?
I'm curious to see if they continue to allow the regular female chaplain to keep doing it. I've noticed in Johnson's week last week that it was guests, Baptist kind of
I see.
preachers
That's interesting.
doing. Yeah.
So they might just have continuous use of guest chaplains so that the females never come back.
I just want to keep an eye. I would suspect he would try to do something like that. We'll see.
Maybe
that
his
just
wife,
seems
though,
exactly
possibly.
him, doesn't it?
It does, unless he wanted to put his wife up there. She's not a chaplain, but
Oh, boy.
maybe, well, who knows? Maybe she is. She's not a counselor either, but she said she is. So, yeah, and I understand she's got some other strange practices in her counseling service, all of which, by the way, if anybody else was doing it, Johnson would immediately say it was paganism and witchcraft. and they have to be, called out for it. But apparently she's got some kind of, in addition to the oddities of her beliefs, she's got some strange practices to go. I'll have to fill you in on all that later. But
Yes, I have not read that part.
oh, okay. Well, you'll hear about it soon enough, I'm sure, in the days to come. And lastly, I guess just before we prepare to go on our shortened segment, I noticed you up to date on what's happening with Tuberville and his military blockades. But it looks like, does it look like they've got a real plausible play? And
if they can get Republicans to agree, and maybe in this new world of fighting Mike Johnson, they will. Maybe they can tie in somehow Ukraine. I don't know.
All right. But, the option was always sort of available to them to try to move these promotions en bloc, but they have to get past at least one filibuster to do it. Right? There's no way of doing it without.
Right.
So, okay. All right. Well, everybody should have a look at that one. You've written it up. You wrote it up last week. Senate Democrats' end run around Tuberville's military promotion blockade. Is this the standing order idea?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. And in fun breaking news, I just sent you a link. A shoemaker says Ron DeSantis is probably wearing height boosters. 3 shoemakers say
3? Wow. Well,
just for fun. Send you the link.
I'm amazed they could find 3 shoemakers to put together in one article. So it must have been a convention of some kind. All right, the cobbler lobby is out to let us know. So he's using height-enhancing lifts, not unlike Trump is suspected of doing. Maybe that's the reason he did it. Not that he really felt like he was so short, but Trump does it, and I should do it too. So is that what accounts for his weird-looking cowboy boots?
That's the weird-looking cowboy boots.
Excellent. Okay. He's got a weird thing about boots. He's not doing good in the boot category.
No.
This is the second boot flop for this guy. All right, Meatball Ron. I'll take that much from Trump and say he's not particularly great at nicknames, but some of them are really good. That one seems to work.
That's a fun one.
Okay. Well, all right. Thanks for stopping by on a busy morning. We'll try and check in with you again next Tuesday. Probably equally busy, but get some word on what's happening with appropriations bills. Thanks, Joe.
All right. Talk to you next week.
Take care.
From networksradio.com.
Oh, that was well timed. That sounded like super professional.
Kagro.
Oops, I'm ruining it now.
With David
Okay,
Waldman.
well, now time to hand things over to Justice Putnam, who will sound considerably more professional as he kicks off the West Coast Cookbook and Speakeasy next right here on Networks Radio. What's he got on tap? Let's say what's up at top today. Trump will do anything he can to save himself between now and the 2024 election. That sounds like maybe an update on what's going on in the courtroom for TFG. Stay tuned.